I think I want to open up by, you've been going to a lot of town halls and a lot of community events, and
Mhm.
whatever you're comfortable with.
Sure.
I want to ask,
Yeah.
have you seen anything either towards you or towards anybody else in the community? I know recently Little Tokyo, the temple in Little Tokyo was vandalized. The two lamps in front were knocked over, and then two lampposts, wooden lampposts, were burnt down. So sorry.
Yeah.
The great thing though is that organized by a progressive Japanese American group. They That's not their name, by the way. I'll
Mhm.
find the name for them and put that in the description. But there was a group that organized a GoFundMe, and I think raised um, almost $100,000 the last I checked, almost $100,000 to cover the damages and like upgrade their security. So yeah. Want to start
Absolutely.
by asking if you're comfortable, if you have any
Sure.
experience.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. I was born in Los Angeles, and uh, during my formative years, it was in areas of where Asians were definitely the minority in number by far, right? So it was
Mhm.
mostly white neighborhoods, or non-Asian, non-AAPI neighborhoods, and yeah, it was exhausting, right? It's a common occurrence, what they call aggressions. Microaggressions were, a daily, if not hourly type thing.
Mhm.
Um, Aggressions, and that was in the late '60s through the '70s. And you could kind of see the trend where um, the more serious aggressions and crimes are kind of reflective of the economic times as well, right? So
Mhm.
we saw when uh, uh, during the Vincent Chin episode with the economic crisis and the
Mhm.
blaming Japanese automakers for the depressed conditions in Detroit, and in the '90s with the strong uh, presence of Japanese companies coming into downtown LA, buying a lot of real estate, and you see a lot more hate during those times. And I definitely see a tie between the economic times, and that more than anything really. And um, yeah, but in terms of on the ground type of aggressions, yeah, common, just derogatory names all the time.
Mhm.
And it's pretty common for those of us who grew up here, during these times. Um, yeah, I mean, I remember, going to with a group of friends who were also Asian during high school and going to a bowling alley. It happened to be in Orange County, somewhere. This is in the late '70s, and you know, with these other kids that they're there calling us gooks and things like that. And you know by that age, you feel like you've got to push back, right? You've got to push back
Mhm.
to let them know. And you stand up there, and if you get in fights, that's the cost of it. But after a while, you just get so tired, right? It's that
Mhm.
you say to yourself, well, I'm going to take a day off, I'm just not going to do, I'm just whatever. Um, so and it's kind of sad that it's still that way to a lot of people. I think maybe it's not as common, or it's not as in your face, but it's there. And those types of things. I remember one time, uh, Dodger Stadium. We were in the parking lot trying to get out, and this is the time when Hideo Nomo was pitching, and it was a lot of Asians in the crowd, and uh, bumper to bumper traffic. And I remember these white kids, probably young adults, and walking around the car and seeing that I'm Asian. My wife's in the car as well, and you know. saying, "Hey, there's Nomo, let's get him," blah blah blah, and they probably for rooting for the other team, but he starts um, saying he's going to piss on my car. He pulls down his pants and starts pissing on the back tire, right? So that type of thing, and it's like, oh gosh, what am I going to say? Um, yeah, but and I have to say that my father, at my parents' age, they were here in the 50s and 60s, and
Hmm.
what 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 we call aggressions now, they wouldn't think twice about, right? They're talking, especially I come from a blue collar family, and I mean it's in your face then, right? And it is violent sometimes and
Hmm.
physical, so yeah, it's yeah, but on the other hand, I would just wanted to I feel there's something also gross about calling um, what are aggressions and microaggressions as hate crimes. Sometimes, you know, there's no excuse for that type of stuff, but it's, to me, sometimes it's gross when I see, as we saw with the recent incidents, where some of these Hollywood actors, Asian actors, are putting out what amounts to bounties for
Hmm.
to go after perpetrators, and there's something gross about that. Well, especially when the perpetrator is caught on video as being another person of color, right? Then
Hmm.
you're falling to that same trap where the establishment is actually throwing us against each other like that. That's
Yeah.
not to be mistaken for what happens in Georgia. I mean, certainly. I mean, that's
Hmm.
just crazy. That's got to be prosecuted and brought to justice right away. No question about it. I'm not saying that others aren't to be brought to justice, but there's something about what I think the one thing we may have learned from the 80s and 90s was that um, being tough on crime
Hmm.
type of attitude is really plays into the carceral state and the pro-police population, and which is a lot of the people who um, are in power, who are all for more policing, and it's very
Yeah.
difficult. It's We have to be careful not to fall into that trap where they co-opt that message, and
I
in other words,
remember,
yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I remember that time when yeah, you're referencing, I think it was like Olivia Munn put up like, $20,000 to help investigate, someone that was like close to her that, got assaulted in New York. At least I believe it was New York. And then like, well, I saw that in a way of like, isn't it sad that she had to do that, that she had to put like money up for that, like it wouldn't just be a crime that police would even care about unless there was money involved
Yeah.
by a private party. And I looked at it in that way.
Mhm.
Another thing is that, yeah, I'm afraid that there are going to be those communities that would try to contextualize that model minority myth of like, oh yeah, we're Asians, and like I even had that in a comment recently on my, I think you saw saw that,
Yeah.
somebody saying like, oh yeah, do you think like it's nice to see Asian Americans actually protest, more civil than the Black
Yeah.
community, and I'm like, why are we playing
Right.
into this game? Why are we like,
Yeah.
there was context, and you brought up Vincent Chin, and you brought up, all of these other events where, Asian Americans either found solidarity in other communities of color, like, Vincent Chin, when basically it was like those two guys were going to get a slap on the
Mhm.
wrist and an
Yeah.
$8,000 fine. You had Jesse Jackson and the Black community coming up. It's like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
The
Right.
community
Right.
really came together. And I think part of the reason of that is like none of that history is even taught in like the high school or the elementary school level. And it's like,
Yeah.
these things are important. Like these things happen because of the context of the civil rights movement. And like
Yes.
it really, really irks me that apparently in our textbook the civil rights movement started and ended with Martin Luther King,
Mm. Yep.
and it kind of disregards the other voices of like Malcolm X, Angela Davis, even folks like Billie Holiday, the first, like one of the artists that really started that conversation of like lynchings are happening, and like we're and
Yep.
she got punished for that. The FBI basically killed
Yep.
Billie Holiday.
Yeah.
So
Right.
so
Right.
I think it's like a two thing. It's like it's this idea that unless we put money up front, people will care. And then the other end is like it's forgetting that there is a context that like communities of color has came to the aid of Asian Americans.
Hmm.